Chapter 8. Lessons of Arcadia. The candlelight flickered, casting shifting shadows across the pages of Lilla's book. The children had been fed, washed, and tucked into bed, their soft breathing filling the quiet orphanage. It was in these still moments, when only the whispers of the night remained, that she returned to her memories. She traced her fingers over the worn leather of her journal, feeling the raised lettering of her own handwriting. Then, with a slow exhale, she dipped her quill into ink and began to write. Arcadia was a city of endless wonders, a place of towering metal spires and moving streets, of artificial rivers and sky bridges that glowed with soft light. It was a machine that never rested, a heart that never stopped beating. To those who lived there, it was simply home. For me, it was the only world I knew. My parents were well respected in the city, not warriors, not politicians, but something just as valuable, listeners. They were healers of the mind, psychologists who helped others navigate the struggles of living in a city where ambition was endless and failure was a shadow that followed all who dreamed too high. Their work was simple but essential, and because of them, our family never lacked for comfort. I grew up in their care, in a home filled with conversation and the scent of tea brewed to soothe anxious souls. Our door was always open, and though I did not always understand the weight of the words spoken in our house, I learned early that strength was not always in the blade, but in the heart and mind. Still, Arcadia did not raise weak children. From a young age, I was trained in both magic and martial arts. Not because my parents wished me to fight, but because Arcadia demanded that all who lived within it could stand on their own. The city itself was built on the principles of strength, whether through wisdom, invention, or battle. I learned the way of the staff, the way of the sword. I learned to channel magic through my hands, to weave light into shields and fire into weapons. I had no reason to think my life would ever change, that Arcadia would ever fall. But all cities, no matter how great, are at the mercy of the world beyond their walls. It started with whispers. The kings of Elysium, those who once ruled over the heart of mankind, began to fight. Some claimed it was a battle of pride, others that it was a struggle for the future of humanity itself. No one knew for certain, but one by one, those rulers who had stood for centuries vanished. What followed was not war, but something worse: uncertainty. Without their kings, the great kingdoms of humanity fractured. Some fell into civil war, others faded into obscurity. Those who remained struggled to hold on to their power, their names still spoken, but their thrones standing empty. 3 names endured: King Alden, the Unyielding, Queen Lysara, the Silver Flame, and Lord Vorath, the Shadowbound. But they were not enough to hold the world together. And in that chaos, the foundations of Arcadia began to shake. Lilla paused, her quill hovering over the page. Her breath was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. She remembered this part too well. She closed her eyes, letting the past settle around her. The sound of metal groaning, the shifting of great gears, the murmur of uncertain voices in the streets. Arcadia had not yet fallen, but the first cracks had appeared, and she, just a child, had no idea what was coming. Lilla's quill scratched against the parchment, her thoughts weaving through the past as the candlelight flickered beside her. The children slept soundly, their soft breathing filling the orphanage, but she was elsewhere, deep in the history of the world she had lived through. Without Elysium's unity, conflict grew like unchecked wildfire. Bandits and warlords claimed the land, and creatures with a thirst for blood emerged from the shadows. It became a constant battle when Arcadia passed through those lands, its walls repelling invaders, its warriors holding the line. But no city, no matter how strong, could shield itself from the changing tides of history. Years ago, before the fallen kingdom, 3 new rulers existed: Lear, Camber, and Albanactus. They were of the old king's blood, men who took their thrones with steel and willpower. Their war for dominance over Elysium was long and merciless, and when it was done, the land was theirs. But it was not the same Elysium that once was. It led to the fall, for they had only sought war, and when they vanished, those they left behind could only see war as a path. Then came the dwarves. They were unshaken by the fall of human kingdoms. Dwarven rule had always been strong, bound by unbreakable traditions. But even they were not immune to the cruelty of ambition. Their king was slain by his own son, an act so vile that it shattered the very foundation of their civilization. The legendary immortal army, the protectors of the Dwarven realm, was destroyed in the aftermath, and with it the great capital of Lindara. It is said that the city did not simply fall, but sank deep into the earth, swallowed by the wounds of its betrayal. The elves had already nearly vanished from the continent centuries before, their kingdoms lost to wars and persecution. Those who remained attempted to rebuild among the wind tribes, but they were no longer the powerful race they had once been. The pain of their fall had crippled them, and though they endured, their ambition had faded. And the Queen of Dragons, she too disappeared. She had been one of the strongest, the most willful, a force that even the gods respected. But in those dark times, she was simply gone, and in her absence, the dragons began to stir. Metallic and chromatic alike, their presence in the world grew once more, some seeking order, others seeking ruin. Without her to keep them in check, the age of dragons threatened the continent, slowly but surely. It was around this time that Uther Pendragon was born. And it was also then that I first heard diligence. The voice was not loud, not commanding. It was a whisper in the depths of my soul, a presence that I had never felt before. The connection between us was instant, absolute. I felt something awaken within me, something that had always been there but had never spoken until that moment. I thought it was a blessing. I thought it made me special. But perhaps it was a curse. Lilla stopped writing. Her fingers trembled over the parchment, her unseeing eyes staring into the candle's glow. Diligence. The memory of that first touch of divinity still lingered so vividly. She thought she had been chosen. She thought it had meant something great. She had been so wrong.